But now we're in a situation where their livelihoods are going to be impacted by these fines and liens because they cannot deal with their property. And theoretically, the government or the authorities could force the sale of their properties, which, to be honest, is just frightening. That would result in the destruction of the community. We can't let that happen. So hence, we're going to fight this as far as we can until we get justice.
I'm in Chatsworth Township again to talk to the Amish again. They won't come on camera, but I had a heart-to-heart with them. I promised them that we would cover every single thing that happens to them in their fight for justice. If you want to help crowdfund our citizen journalism, go to AmishReports.com. Ezra Levant here from Rebel News. As you can see, I am not in my normal habitat. I'm in the township of Chatsworth, Ontario. About 2.5 hours drive outside Toronto. I am in Amish country. Trouble is, I can't show you that because the Amish have a custom. They don't want to appear on TV, on video. They don't even want their names used. But I can assure you that 20 feet behind my cameraman indeed is an Amish house. And we just had a meeting there with the head of the local steering committee for the Amish because we are here to fight back against the most insane story I've ever heard about COVID over-enforcement. You might recall from my last video that the Amish, like I say, they don't use phones, they don't use electricity, they don't have a smartphone, they don't even use cars. They go to church in a horse and carriage. When they were crossing the border during the COVID mania, they were asked, did you download the ArriveCan app? Now imagine being Amish, you don't have a smartphone, you've never downloaded anything, you don't know what an app is, and if you didn't download this smartphone app, this ArriveCan app on your phone, you would get a $6,000 fine every time. And the Amish were going back across the border, back and forth, doing their business, and then the fines were racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then they put liens on their homes and farms because they didn't pay them. And now they can't get mortgages or loans or pass on a house from father to son. Boy, did people ever get mad. They laughed at the absurdity of the government, but they cried at the unfairness and the injustice of it. I mean, it is absurd to ask someone who doesn't even use a telephone, did you download the ArriveCan app? What? And instead of using their common sense, the border police use vengeance and anger. And you know what? There might even have been a little bit of religious bigotry in it too, because the Amish look different than us. They speak German in their own community. And it's easy to hate something that is alien to you. And people who don't get with the times and don't drive a car and use a smartphone, well, maybe these border police had a little bit of an instinct to twist the knife into them, because I have never in my life heard of enforcement of a COVID fine that literally attaches as an encumbrance to the property of these farmers, stopping them from doing regular commerce. Well, I was so furious. What we've done is we have teamed up with the Democracy Fund, which is a civil liberties law firm with charitable status, and we have deployed not one, but 2 civil liberties lawyers to help the Amish community. And the reason I'm back here today is because the first 5 Amish families that were abused this way have signed up for representation by the Democracy Fund, and 20 more other Amish families that were abused in this same way, well, they say they want in on it too. And we've also heard that a neighboring Amish community from down the highway is interested in it as well. I guess what we're saying is we're doing a very challenging thing that I don't know has ever been done before. We are pulling together a community of Amish to fight for freedom. Now, the thing about the Amish is they don't fight. They turn the other cheek. That's a biblical phrase that they take literally. And so this is a difficult thing for them to do. They turn the other cheek, they submit to authority, they are not rebellious in any way. So how do you fight against religious persecution if by your very nature and your religious belief you are not supposed to be defiant? Well, that's where you and me come in, because these Amish, who are very modest and low profile, they don't even want to be on camera, they need our help because you and I are fighters and we have to step up because they will not. Their own beliefs compel them to be submissive to the government, which means they are susceptible to bullying. I'd like to call in to the camera shot a man who is not Amish, but one of the two lawyers for the Democracy Fund who is assisting the Amish, and I'd like him to come forward and to tell us a little bit about the meeting today. Come forward, Mark Joseph. Now, Mark, thanks very much for meeting us here on the highway. It's sort of a funny shot because we don't want to show the farm, we don't want to show the farmer, and we don't want to show any of the Amish because it's a very unusual thing. It's like they are from a different era and they don't want to be pulled into modernity. Trouble is, how do you fight a modern civil liberties infringement if you're not a fighter? Well, that's where you come in.
Right. So we are in the process of meeting with our clients and collecting information. A lot of this is investigative work because the information they received has been partial about these tickets. So we have to go back and call the court and pull that information. My colleague Adam Blake Gallipo, the Senior Litigation Counsel, he is doing a lot of that work. And now we're in the process of filing what's called a reopening application with the court. So we will be doing that shortly. And then from there, we see what happens. But we intend to fight this. If we lose at that point, we will appeal it. But we're committed to getting justice for these folks because obviously they don't deserve this.
So the reason we have to file a reopening application is because this happened a few years ago during the COVID mania. But the Amish didn't really know how to fight or didn't want to fight. No one knew about the problem, so they couldn't fight for them. So all these things went through a legal process, but the Amish weren't there. And how do you a modern collection agency that's coming for the fines, try doing that to a community that doesn't use telephones or email. And I understand that even the idea of download the ArriveCan app to your smartphone was such an alien concept. These men and women didn't even really understand what crime they had committed. They thought maybe it's because they didn't wear a mask, which they have a religious exemption for. All of this happened when they had no guardian, no legal advocate for them. They were railroaded. So all of this concrete has hardened. We've got to crack it open and convince a judge to have a rehearing of these matters that's fair, right?
Right. So, as you say, this community doesn't engage with technology or the modern legal system. They live their lives by biblical principles. So it was our understanding that they didn't understand the nature of the tickets, and then they received partial information, no notice of the tickets, no notice of conviction. So we believe we can go back, if we can get before an authority, make them understand that these tickets need to be reopened. And from there, we can have a trial on these tickets and argue the substance, but it's going to be a long process, but that's where we are.
I met with the head of the steering committee, and I'm not going to use his name because again, these folks, they don't believe in publicity. It makes them uncomfortable to be showy. They're think of a peacock. Now think of the opposite of a peacock. That's the Amish, the opposite of a peacock. So the fact that their name would even be mentioned in public makes them uncomfortable. So it's a challenge to marshal such people for a fight. But they had sort of a council of the elders who sat down with you. How long were you meeting with these elders and the 5 first Amish clients today? How long were you in there for?
Well, it was most of the morning. I can't get into what was said. Obviously, there's solicitor-client confidentiality there, but it takes some time to explain things in any legal process, even to people who understand generally the system. And so that's our job, is to give advice, make our clients understand, and so that they can give us instructions. And so I can say that that process has been completed, and now we're on to filing documents.
They're grown men and women. They've been living here for a long time. They're part of the community, even though they are separate in their own way. But to explain how this legal process works, it really is like talking to someone from a foreign country, because they do not think of themselves as adversarial. They don't want to be adversarial. So what you're talking about is alien to them, and I give them huge credit for allowing you to help. I know that might sound upside down. You are the one doing the charitable work by giving them free legal help, but it was an effort to convince these folks to allow others to help them, because they don't want to be fighters, but we have to be fighters for them.
Right. So, as I understand, their religious beliefs is conflict averse. And so that's a bit of a hurdle for them, and that might have caused them not to make inquiries, I guess. But now we're in a situation where their livelihoods are going to be impacted by these fines and liens because they cannot deal with their property. And theoretically, the government or the authorities could force the sale of their properties, which, to be honest, is just frightening. That would result in the destruction of the community. We can't let that happen. So, hence, we're going to fight this as far as we can until we get justice.
You know, you said something terrifying there. And I didn't think of that when I was here last month doing the first story. I thought, okay, the lien, for folks who don't know what a lien is, it's a legal attachment or encumbrance that you sort of tag. You could tag a car with it. You could tag a home with it. A lien basically says, I have a legal claim against this property. So if you think you can buy it, you got to take care of my demand first. It's sort of getting you priority for a collection. So if the government comes and slaps all these homes and farms with liens, I thought, oh, that's just a real nuisance because these farmers cannot get a loan to run the farm. They can't change they can't pass it down from father to son. I was just thinking, okay, that's a nuisance. But I read a number of the comments on YouTube under my first video, and so many people said they are trying to seize the land. Because like you say, theoretically, if you have a lien, you can go to court and say, I want this paid. Judge, sell the house, give me my fine, and then they can keep the residue. It is a way to, I guess you could, expropriate a property. I mean, I never thought of that, but that is the terrifying last possible consequence if the Amish don't pay their fines. And by the way, the $6,000 a pop, that's per person. So you got a family, mom, dad, 2 kids, let's say, that could be a $24,000 fine.
Right. I mean, ultimately, that's what could happen. I'm certainly not an expert on liens, but that's the looming threat. I mean, there's also credit problems. You can't dispose of your property if you've got a lien on it. So from father to son, that's a problem. So really, it's now affecting the community, and that's a big threat and a danger for them.
What I found very hopeful is not only did you have 5 people sign up today and another 20 express interest, but another Amish community down the highway. And I think that you and the Democracy Fund and Adam Blake Gallipo, your fellow lawyer, are going to help folks who, and in a way, how did we even know that they needed help? Because they're not squawking about it. Everyone else in society is a victim, is a complainer. You know, the world is full of people with grievances, many of them trumped up. But imagine a community that's the opposite. They just bear their burdens silently, and how would you even know they needed help? It was only because a friend of the Amish, who himself is not Amish, heard about the Democracy Fund. So the fact that we're late to the game, it's because these folks were bearing this pain in silence, which is even more infuriating. The years that they have had this stress over them. I'm glad you're filing the application to crack it open. Tell me where we stand in terms of legal steps. Today you met 5 of the clients. I'm not going to ask you to describe anything subject to solicitor-client privilege, but tell me what the next step would be. Where do you apply? What court do you apply to? What do you ask for? How soon would it happen? Give me some, in not too much jargon, tell me what the next step would be and when that might happen.
Sure. So for these clients, we pulled the court file and determined that there are tickets, and they were issued in Welland County. And so we need to go to the Welland court and file our reopening application and affidavit there, get in front of a clerk or a JP, Justice of the Peace, and have them take a look at our documents and say yes or no, you can reopen this or not. If they say no, then we appeal it. And if they say yes, then we're at the starting line. That means we've chosen a trial. We're going to adjudicate this in a trial, so we can hopefully make contact with the Crown Counsel, and we can explain the situation. We think this is a systemic failure. The system just could not deal with this community and how they interact with the modern world. And so we have some good legal arguments to make. beside that general observation. And also, we think we have the equities on our side, Ezra. We think not just the law is on our side, but we think this is a matter of fairness. And so we have some good arguments to make, but that's the next step. We file the documents, reopening application. We see what the court says, yes or no. Yes, good, we're off to the races. No, fine, we're going to appeal this.
And in so many of these cases, the Amish weren't involved. They weren't informed. These things came as a complete surprise. Last time I was here, I heard there was a young man who went to the bank to get a loan, and he pledged his house as a security for the loan, a kind of mortgage. And he was shocked to hear from the banker, no, I can't do that. So this guy was totally surprised. So it's not like these Amish, some of them may have thought, oh, there's a problem out here. I don't want to engage with it. But these liens being put on the farm, absolute surprise, and that's got to break some rules somewhere. To put a lien on someone's house without notice, without advising, that feels, well, it feels un-Canadian. And I just hope the justice system is self-aware enough to know that there was abuses done by these border police, and that abuse should not be able to continue on like a cascading waterfall through the system, and now these guys can't access the credit of their own farms. All right. I want to tell our viewers, Mark, it's great. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for spending so much time here. Pass on our thanks to Adam Blake Gallipo of the Democracy Fund. I want to say a few words to our Rebel viewers, and I appreciate you coming out here today. Folks, Mark Joseph is a senior lawyer at the Democracy Fund, and his colleague, Adam Blake Gallipo, have been engaged with these Amish, and it's very difficult for them to do that because you can't just phone them up. You can't just send them an email. You got to either use snail mail or have a personal visit. You got to get into a car and schlep 2.5 hours out of Toronto. It is very difficult to fight a modern legal battle with folks who are living as their ancestors lived in the 1800s. By the way, I should tell you, I bought a pie, pickles, jam, and one other thing I can't remember, because they do sell delicious Amish produce, but that's another story for another day. No one else cares. But that's only because no one else knows. The last video I did had almost 500,000 views, so that tells me actually quite a lot of people care. They just need to know the story. But how are they going to know the story if the Amish don't go on camera? Even right now, the Amish are 20 feet behind us that way, but they don't want us to film them. How do you tell a story when the central characters of that story will not get on the stage? Well, we have to be their voice for them. Now, Adam Blake Gallipo and Mark Joseph, who you just heard from, will be their voice in the court of law. You heard the plan. Go before a justice of the peace, show what happened here with an affidavit, crack the case open and have a rehearing. That's the plan in the court of law. But what about the court of public opinion? Because I think the government of Canada, which manned the border, and the government of Ontario, which prosecuted these cases and slapped the liens on them, I think they need to have a do-over too. I think that they should realize that in their zeal to enforce the COVID laws, they stepped on a lot of fingers and a lot of toes, including a community that has been roughly treated. But the only way to do that is if we be their voice in the court of public opinion. I feel seized with this case personally. And even if I myself can't make it out here for every court appointment and every visit, my colleague David Menzies and other reporters will. Now, it's a 2.5-hour drive out here, 2.5 hours back. Mark Joseph, the lawyer, I think he came out overnight. There are expenses with it. And so we are setting up 2 different crowd funds. You heard me describe crowdfund number 1, called helptheamish.com. That goes to cover the legal fees that would be associated with deploying 2 excellent lawyers in court for what could be a years-long battle. But I want to be out here every time something moves. And if I can't, I want our team to be. I want David Menzies, our reporter. I want Lincoln Jay, our videographer. I want to cover this as intensively as we covered the trial of Tamara Leach, the leader of the trucker convoy, who had a 47-day trial in Ottawa. Now, I don't know if we're going to have a 47-day trial here, but between all the different hearings and challenges, it may be. So if you believe in this citizen journalism, and if you think it's critical that we be the voice for the Amish, who by choice are voiceless, I don't even think it's a choice, I think it's a calling. It's their faith that makes them voiceless. Then go to AmishReports.com, AMISH, AmishReports.com, where we will report every single development in this case. It's either me or my colleagues, our videographers. We will not let the Amish suffer in silence anymore. And if we're coming out to the farmhouse here or the courthouse, we'll get you covered. Go to AmishReports.com and help me help them. Let's get some justice for these Amish folks. I'm in Chatsworth Township again to talk to the Amish again. They won't come on camera, but I had a heart-to-heart with them. I promised them that we would cover every single thing that happens to them in their fight for justice. If you want to help crowdfund our citizen journalism, go to AmishReports.com.